Hey, this is Tim. Before we begin today's show, Hot Takes on the Classics, kindly go listen to us on the podcast platform of your choice. Also, we are now on Substack, so you'll see some of Emily's writings, some of my writings. And we are on Instagram. Emily, our Instagram is kind of great.
It kind of is, mostly because
why?
Because we're not doing it.
Because we're not doing it. Because we hired someone under 30 to run it for us. If you want to follow us on Instagram, go to Hot Takes Classics and you'll find us there. And now, on with the show.
True religion, in great part, consists in holy affections. The religion which God requires and will accept does not consist in weak, dull, and lifeless, but in the fervent exercises of the heart. That religion is nothing worth which is not heart work. Welcome to Hot Takes on the Classics, a gossipy gallop through the best books ever written. My name is Emily Maeda, and that was from the American theologian Jonathan Edwards in his book, A Treatise on the Religious Affections. And I am joined by Tim McIntosh for our season on love, who will be telling us all about this light and easy reading, the Treatise on the Religious Affections. Hey, Tim.
This is not easy reading, isn't it? I got a little theory. It's not even a theory. I think it's just an empirical fact about why it's difficult. It's kind of, Jonathan Edwards is like almost at the end of the medieval world, and his prose maybe sounds like that a little bit, but because it's English, it hasn't had a translator to make it more current. So you have to wade through some pretty turgid prose to make sense of it. The good news is, that's the bad news. The good news is, okay, Emily, I'm going to make the case to you right at the top, a little bit of the case. This is one of the most timely readings that we're going to do in the last 2 years of doing this show.
One of the most timely.
You're gonna have pertinent.
Okay, let's hear it. Because I don't think anybody else has said that.
I don't think anybody else would say that. It's part of the trenchant insight that I bring to this podcast.
That's right.
And I will unpack that idea by the time we get to our hot takes.
Okay.
But let me say at the beginning, I think that the historical world that Jonathan Edwards lives in, particularly the Great Awakening in the early mid-1700s, is a sort of imprint for almost everything that happens in the United States religiously.
Yeah, and
I should say in Christian religion, I should say.
And we're still feeling, we are a land of revivals, are we not?
We are. We absolutely are.
And we've had lots of different revivals.
So many.
Not just small O Orthodox Christian, right? But
yeah.
The woke
but all sorts,
revivals.
Political revivals. Yeah, the woke revival, exactly.
Yeah, we've got them all.
So let me start, before we actually get into the book, the Treatise of the on the Religious Affections. Let's just talk a little bit about Jonathan Edwards, then a little bit about his historical world, and then we'll get into the book. Because the book, I think, it stood the test of time.
It really has.
However, if the more you understand the history that led up to him writing it, I think the more deeply you can enjoy and get something from the book. So Jonathan Edwards, born 1703, spent most of his life as a pastor in Northampton, Massachusetts. He was precocious. Entered Yale at age 13, graduated at 17. He would later become president of the College of New Jersey. Emily, do you know what the College of New Jersey later became?
I believe it's Princeton.
Princeton University. A couple of quotes about Jonathan Edwards. The first one is by Sidney Alstrom, A-H-L-S-T-R-O-M, Yale professor, who is very decorated in his own right. Sidney Alstrom says this about Edwards: he was the most acute theological mind ever produced in America. George Marsden is one of Edwards' biographers. He calls Edwards a passionate visionary a world-class intellectual, and one of the most important Americans in the history of Christianity. But Emily, I bet when you think Jonathan Edwards, you don't think like passionate visionary. What do you think of?
I would say that I do think of his sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God.
Of course.
Did you read this in high school?
I did read it in high school.
As did I.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say, it's surprising. I mean, Sinners
What
in the
about
Hands.
it surprises you?
It sounds fire and brimstone, which of course
Yes.
it is. But it is far more than that, right? Which you do understand in reading it.
Here's a quote from Edwards, from this sermon. "O sinner, you hang by a slender thread with the flames of divine wrath flashing about it and ready every moment to singe it and burn it asunder, and you have no interest in any mediator, and nothing to lay hold of to save yourself, nothing to keep off the flames of wrath."
Okay, wait. You just read the fire and brimstone part. You did.
Well, the rest of it is not going to be fire and brimstone. The rest of the podcast is not going to be fire and brimstone.
No, I know, but even within this sermon, there's a lot more to it than just that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I read that because I wanted to say, like, one of the things that's so powerful about Jonathan Edwards is that he's a great mind.
Yeah.
But really, like, his great theological talent is to have his readers and his listeners feel.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Which in the time that he's writing, he's writing during the Enlightenment, right? I mean, this is what his prose sort of owes its feeling to, right? That's why we sort of feel it's like it's dense, but yet he probably is the most feelingest person during the Enlightenment, right?
Yeah.
If you think about some of his other contemporaries, remember in our season on war, we couldn't find anything written really about war during this time period. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Funny.
But Jonathan Edwards is probably the most feelingest guy out there.
My friend Christina Bieber Lake, I'd love to bring her on to the show sometime. She just retired from Wheaton not too long ago. She has a little bit of a theory about Edwards. Edwards is really keen to make people feel and also to taste, to understand like what certain feelings would taste like. And she said that oftentimes the word sweet or sweetness or derivatives thereof would show up a lot in his sermons because sugar was extremely hard to get in his area of the world. Right?
Yeah.
And so you're appealing to this taste that is so evocative because of its absence.
Yeah. That's great.
I love that. That's
great.
Okay,
keep going.
Edwards is a pastor in Northampton in his early 30s. So we're thinking like 1934, 35.
17.
Little frontier
1734.
Did I say 19? I'm
You
so
did.
sorry. 1734, 35. Small frontier town. And all of a sudden, something like completely unexpected begins to happen. There's a series of sudden, unexpected conversions, especially among young people. And they're different. They aren't just like intellectual changes, but they're these emotional outpourings. They're deeply heartfelt. They're experiential, and they're happening by the hundreds, by the thousands as this kind of revival begins to grow and grow and grow. It becomes so widespread that historians would later give this movement a name. Emily, you remember the name.
I sure do. First Great Awakening.
The First Great Awakening.
My children do this in their little timeline.
Is there a rhyme that goes to sign with it?
No, they just put their hands over their eyes and take it off. The First Great Awakening. Yes.
Oh.
But I mean, it's so foundational to everything that's coming later.
And Edwards is right in the middle of it. So partly it's due to the power of his preaching, but also as it kind of catches wind, very charismatic, powerful preachers like George Whitefield spelled Whitefield, Whitfield, travel through New England and the middle states and the southern states, and they're drawing these huge crowds, and they're stressing the need for individual salvation, the terrifying reality of divine judgment. So Whitfield is kind of like sidecar in this story. He starts this famous tour in New England in 1740, and Emily, he's drawing crowds of 10 to 20,000 people in open air sermons. Now, that is unheard of because these are not happening in churches. They're happening in fields. So that's the first shock. Here's the other sort of amazing thing. When was the last time you spoke to, I don't know, 200 people in the open air? Like,
it
requires a voice to get 200. I know.
We don't think it's possible.
He could reach 20,000 people with no microphone.
It's pretty crazy when you think about it.
It is. It is.
You also have to think, like, there's no ambient noise either, right? That makes a difference.
Wait, why is there no ambient noise?
There's no cars.
There's no cows lowing in the fields, Emily?
Okay, he had to compete with the cows. Fair.
But you're right. There's no cars off on a distant highway.
But still, it's just ridiculous. How did he do it?
How did he do it?
He must have had an enormous voice.
Benjamin Franklin was a fan of George Whitefield. He resisted being converted by George Whitefield. And there's a story that he tells in his autobiography. It's incredible. So Whitefield would preach his sermon, and late in his sermon, he would make a request to support his orphanage in Georgia, and they would kind of pass the plate or, pass the money back. So Franklin knew he had heard Whitefield preach before, and he's like, I know if I take money, Whitefield's going to get it from me. I'm not going to take my money back. So he doesn't take his money back, and so he goes. Here's Whitefield. Whitefield makes his appeal to his orphanage. And Franklin was so moved by this point, he was like, oh my gosh, I really regret not bringing money. And then he gets a little bit farther into the sermon, and he's like, you know what? Maybe just borrow some money from a friend of mine. So he borrows some money from a friend of mine. And then he gets all of the copper and all of the silver he could find on him and throughout any borrowed coins from friends that he could possibly wheedle out from them.
So he
Whitefield must have been incredible.
Very persuasive. He had learned the art of persuasion. He was using his rhetoric well.
So, Whitefield, Edwards, later on, especially in England, John Wesley, but John Wesley also in the United States, these open-air preachers. Now, Edwards did most of his preaching in the church.
That's what makes that makes him quite different from Whitefield, though, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Whitefield
but
really
there's still this kind of penchant for preaching to a broad swath of people, not just to your congregation and not just under the roof of a church.
Well, and that's partially because of the effects of the printing press, right? Because Edwards' sermons can be written up and things like that. But, I mean, he isn't riding out with Whitefield. I put them in different categories. Like, in my mind, they're just very different people. But you think they're more similar?
I do think they're more similar. I think of Whitefield as sort of like one of the instigators, and also he's the one who gives the theological frame up kind of after the awakening. I think of Whitefield as the voice and the heart of it, and he's the main sermonizer of it. Mm-hmm. But I do think they might be different in temperament and in location. Otherwise, I think of them as doing something pretty similar.
That's interesting. Anyway, let's keep going.
Accompanying these sermons, people are responding with tears, like cries of joy, this like internal sense of release or of freedom, and also trembling. Like people get the quakes and they begin shouting, some faint, some collapse to the ground. And so people don't know what to make of this. Mm-hmm. Christians don't know what to make of this. And from all of this ferment, a division arises. The division, historians now call them the old lights versus the new lights. And I think if you think of old lights versus new lights as a theological difference, you're kind of off to a little bit of a rocky start. That's probably the wrong first step. I think of it chiefly as a cultural difference. No, I think there are theological, philosophical differences that accompany that, but I think it's chiefly, it is two rival cultures, not just a theological dispute. Maybe the best way to describe it is through music. Old lights were like classical orchestra musicians. New lights. Why are you laughing? This is so good, Emily. I'm appealing to your musical.
I know. Keep going.
Experience and expertise. The new lights were like the jazz improvisers. Old lights. What? Wait, go on.
Just saying, I feel a little bit typecasted right now. And
as being a really great musician,
stodgy,
I'm so sorry.
Old lights were stodgy classical musicians.
Oh no! I don't mean that. I don't mean that at all. But I am appealing to your.
I know it's great
musical legacy.
I love it. I love the comparison. I'm just bristling at the fact of being
because you're classical.
I know.
And stodgy, I guess.
I guess
no,
so.
I'm sorry. So old lights are like insisting on the written score.
Yes. It's a great
in the
comparison.
chamber, know.
Right.
And the new light, it's the power of spontaneous experience.
Yes.
So today, these two types of music can peacefully coexist. Like there's respect on both sides. But back then, oh my goodness, each musician, the old lights and the new lights, were saying, you're not even a musician.
Yeah, you're upsetting the apple cart. Yeah,
you're upsetting the apple cart, and you're not even a Christian if you belong to this old version, this new version, right? Big rupture there. So old lights, it's orderly, it's rational, it's learned. That means that church for them is traditional, liturgical, doctrinal, and the new lights were like, no, it needs to be felt. So what if it's happening out in a field? So what if it's a little disorderly? It's from God. So Edwards is right in the middle of this because he's very sympathetic with the new lights, but he is like old
product of the old lights.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So 10 years after the outbreak, 10 years after what we call the Great Awakening begins, he writes in 1746 a treatise concerning the religious affections. Now, I've just got to do a little bit more historical background just because all of this is occurring about a generation before the U.S. Revolution. It's easy to think back that the American colonies are kind of homogenous, kind of waspy.
Far from it, right?
Oh, my goodness.
Far from it.
They are waspy, and they're mostly white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. But that's about where it ends, because we've got to remember that Protestantism is about 200 years old, and since Luther posted his 95 Theses, Protestants and Catholics have not been getting along. And even within Protestantism broadly, there are all these subsets, we'll end up calling them denominations, that they can't get along with each other, and they're divided almost by nation state. Okay? But now they're over in the United States, and they're not divided by state. What did you say, Emily?
They've all come now to the U.S., right?
They've all come now to the U.S.
in Europe, but they've now all come to the U.S.
And now they're kind of neighbors with each other, and they're back on the mainland, back in Europe. Oh my gosh, this is like war.
Yeah.
So are they going to be able to get along once they're now in the colonies? We're talking Baptists, Anglicans, Quakers, Separatists, Catholics, Lutherans, Reformed, Presbyterian, Methodists. Now, on top of that, in the southern state, you got African religious tradition being mixed with Christianity. You've got some Catholics also, especially in Maryland in the southern states. So this is not a time of peaceful, waspy coexistence. It is a very combustible situation.
Yeah.
With the wars of religion kind of looming in the background. And so there's this kind of question, are we even on the same team? We're probably not even on the same team, you guys. Okay. That's the background. when the Great Awakening begins to happen. And now, say, Emily.
No, I was just thinking one of the things that's really crazy to remember, church attendance previous to the Great Awakening was very low in the U.S. Do you remember the statistic on that? I want to say it was like 10%. It's a very low number.
Can I ask you, was that because of the form of living, meaning people were mostly living on farms and they were really geographically separated?
I mean, I think somewhat, but also I remember there's just a lot that the Great Awakening changed. There was high rates of teen pregnancy out of wedlock. I mean, people have this idea of America being sort of radically Christian because of all of these people fleeing religious persecution in Europe. But honestly, the Great Awakening really changes a lot.
Yes.
And I think maybe the dispersion of people is part of it. But it wasn't this Christian utopia that is often made out. I mean, there are parts of it, right? The Puritans, of course.
Right.
But this isn't all the way across the U.S., which I just think is really interesting to think about.
It is. It is really interesting. Edwards' book is attempting to do one thing. It's to distinguish true spiritual renewal from superficial emotionalism. So you've got these ordinary farmers and day laborers and milkmaids who are claiming religious experience that is equal to or greater than those of learned ministers. What does Edwards think about that? Like yes, that's legit. And you've got popular preachers like Whitefield bypassing like the established church order, speaking directly to the masses. This is brand new. And so people are now becoming accustomed to evaluating leaders for themselves rather than just submitting to them. So, like, previously you would have the pastor or priest of a church, and he is the moral and spiritual head of this larger family. Not anymore.
Yeah.
Now people are like, that guy in the front, I don't buy him.
He's not speaking with enough fervor.
Yeah, that's right. So the stakes are really high for Edwards here. Okay, let's talk about how he attempts to answer this question. There are basically 6 parts to his book. The first part is the one we just talked about. It's the historical background. In the wake of the awakening, everyone is claiming religious experience, but surely not everybody's is genuine. Second part, he really camps here on, all right, what are the religious affections? This is the heartbeat to him of what is happening. There are certain religious affections that are being stirred. Are they real or are they not real? Here's how he defines religious affections. Religious affections are the vigorous, heartfelt movements of the will. Our strongest loves, our strongest hatreds, our strongest desires. That's the sort of seat of the spiritual affections, of the religious affections. And genuine Christianity is impossible if they are not moved. Quote, true religion in great part consists in the affections. Okay, that's part 2. What are the religious affections? Part 3, what are the signs of like a stirring of the emotional, of the religious affections that are not reliable, that are not legit? So it's kind of like he's building his case backwards. Instead of going into like describing what the true marks of grace are, Edwards talks about misleading indicators. And one of them is emotional intensity. Edwards is like, sure, it might be a mark, it might not be a mark, it's just not consistent. It could be misleading. Quote, it is no sign one way or the other that religious affections are very great or raised very high. It is no sign that affections are spiritual, that they come with the text of scriptures remarkably brought to the mind.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
What do you think is his distinction between affections and emotions, or are they synonymous?
They're not synonymous. I think that he would say that the emotions are let's do a little thought experiment. I just ate a Kit Kat bar that I stole from my daughter's Halloween candy bag, right?
Yeah.
And it filled me with delight. I loved the Kit Kat.
Yeah.
But is that evidence of any sort of profound and lasting change to my will?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Right.
So I think he's going to say
That-
he locates it in the will, in that kind of like inner part where decisions are made, where our being is guided toward, affixated toward God or not God.
Mm-hmm. The emotions maybe lie above the affections, or they come
right.
out of the affections.
Right. Part 4. Now he's going to talk about grace. We saw the things that are not reliable. Here are the things that are reliable. Edwards says that the true decisive test of grace is long-term obedience. Momentary feelings may burn out. Holy affections endure. Quote, the nature of gracious affections, in other words, affections that are like changed by God through grace, is to carry them to practice. The life of a Christian, says Edwards, is a life of practice. Holiness is the fruit. I mean, this is the heart. This is the whole thing for him, is that there's so many things that are a mystery about human beings. We cannot see into each other's hearts of hearts. We sometimes can't even see into our own heart of hearts. But a life of good and gracious action is the best evidence that the spirit, that the religious affections have been really changed. So, last part of the book is basically naming what the book's purpose is, which is to purify this big revival.
Right.
He has kind of a pastor's aim. It's not to discourage emotion, to like suffocate the emotion, but it's to refine the revival by grounding it in holiness, in good actions. Quote, as there are false affections, so there are true, and the difference between the one and the other is exceedingly great. So a little conclusion, and then Emily, let's take a little midpoint break.
Okay, sounds good.
So from Sidney Alstrom, the American church historian, I highly recommend Sidney Alstrom. That's another show. Quote, what Edwards sought was a religion of the heart, yet one tested by the most rigorous standards of theological reason. Edwards did not merely report revival. He interpreted it and gave it a theological framework that endured. I'm starting to get out of myself. I think that Jonathan Edwards' kind of test is really important today.
I agree. Are we going to take a break and come back and find out what that test is?
Yes, we are.
Let's take a break.
So, Emily.
Yes.
We talked at our last 2 podcasts about my forthcoming play.
So excited to hear about it. You just had a performance. Tell us about your play.
The play is about a man named Soren Kierkegaard. I think one of the great minds of the 19th century. Near and dear to my heart. Galen and I are not going to name our child Soren because we want him to be happy. But he is near and dear to my heart. You can learn more about the play at kierkegaardplay.com. So we were invited by an arts conference, the Wedgwood Circle annual conference, to perform at the conference.
That's fantastic.
And so we did. We had to put it together like really quickly. We just did a scripts in hand performance, limited lighting, limited costuming, et cetera, et cetera. And I was very happy.
That's fantastic.
I also think that it is a very unique play, and I think a lot of the audience is like, what is going on here? And I love it. And I think it's really moving, and it's also really unique. And I think we're just itching to have a full-on fully staged, memorized, well-lit, well-costumed performance because it kind of needs it. It really needs it.
That's so exciting. I feel that our listeners would be really into your play.
I hope so.
I think we have those kind of listeners.
I think we do too. I know. I was thinking during the performance that the play will really thrive when it finds a little bit of a bookish audience.
I think so.
And I don't mean it's not like a bunch of long monologues. It's not that kind of play, not at all. But I think it would appeal to somebody who really enjoys reading and who really enjoys great books. So we're hoping to kind of find that type of theater and subsequently that kind of audience too. People have asked if they can support the play in ways other than attending a play, because the play is only being performed in like a few select cities right now. There are ways to donate on kierkegaardplay.com. And honestly, every little bit helps. So if you're so inclined, we'd really appreciate it.
Go donate.
Go donate. Emily, time for the hot take.
Wait. I thought you had something else to tell us about Jonathan Edward before that, summing up what you thought.
Well, the big summary is, in religious revivals, you can see a lot of things that don't necessarily equate to, how do I say this?
A changed life.
A changed life, but they're dazzling to behold.
Yes.
And sometimes if you're on the outside looking in, you can just kind of have the question like, well, is this legit? Is this real or not? And I think Edwards is just saying, if there is you can't tell in that moment. Mm-hmm. You can only tell with a life lived in good works and in love.
Well, I think you should read your big takeaway right there.
Okay. Here it is. In the last 6 months, we're in the U.S., this is 2025, there's been this huge, everybody's talking about it, like a vibe shift. Mm-hmm. I work with a lot of Christian organizations. These Christian organizations exist across the denominational spectrum, and almost among every single one that I work with, there's widespread agreement. There is at a minimum, a vibe shift happening, and at a maximum, there's some sort of spiritual awakening happening. So the Pew Research Center is even saying things like a third of Americans said that religion is gaining influence in the country, up from 18% a year ago. There's evidence that Christianity is starting to make a comeback in the U.S., especially led by young people. There's an organization called Baptize America that drew 30,000 people to be baptized in the last year. Like, all of these things, to me, are in some ways phenomenologically a little bit like the Great Awakening, right?
Yeah, interesting.
Something seems to be happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go on. You're about to say
something. I was thinking when you were talking about George Whitefield, I was like, Charlie Kirk, might he be a latter-day George Whitefield, kind of a firebrand? I mean,
That's
Whitefield
part of the question.
Was a total firebrand, right?
That's part of the question, right?
Yeah.
I think Charlie Kirk is still 2 months later is still kind of on everybody's lips. Like, what did Charlie Kirk's life mean? What did was he a Christian martyr? Was he just a martyr for a different set of beliefs? Like, what exactly was he? Mm-hmm. So I think, let me try to make the case for you.
Okay.
There is a little bit of a mapping today onto that old light, new light cultural conflict. Mm. Okay? Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
I think there's a big cultural conflict that is happening now. I think a big change is happening culturally. I think right now there is a rejection of kind of like this old, decrepit ruling class, like the institutions of the secular elite. Mm-hmm. I think there has been a kind of bottled up frustration that is now sort of exploding. Mm-hmm. That old, decrepit ruling class was extremely moralistic. You're allowed to say this. You're not allowed to say that.
Yes.
So I think in some ways...
We're going to police you on this.
What did you say?
We're going to police you, right?
We're going to police you on this. So in like the vibe shift is sort of a repudiation of that old moralistic ruling class. I think in some ways it kind of maps onto the old lights. There was a lot of institutional control that the old lights had. I think that old moralistic class also had and still has. And now there's this sort of like new light cultural shift that's happening. It's a rejection of a sort of cultural moralism, a feeling of freedom from that old class. And there's accordingly a sort of excitement of religious feelings. And the big question for me is it real? I don't know. I genuinely do not know. But this reading for me has been really refreshing because I think Jonathan Edwards would kind of lean over our shoulder and say, of course you don't know.
Yeah.
We didn't know back in the day.
Yeah.
There was lots of excitement. There was lots of change, and a lot of those changes went in good directions. Some of those changes went in bad directions. But is this like a true change of heart, a repentance, a returning toward God? I don't know. I think Jonathan Edwards would say. So the thing to look for is, does it result in changed behavior, love, good works, humility?
Yeah, that's great. Now, we put this in our section on agape.
Yeah.
Why?
Love of God and love of neighbor, but love of God first, is a real, that's what someone with a truly renewed will drives toward.
But is he saying, would he be using agape? I mean, it's interesting because he wrote this in English.
Yeah.
So we don't have any translation, right? I mean, because like we can look to Augustine, and when Augustine says, late have I loved you, he uses amor, right? Which is the Latin equivalent of eros. Late have I loved you. But how do you think is the primacy of God's love, which is always agape toward us, center in his mind, or is it our love towards God that's center in his mind, do you think?
Is it God's love for us or our love for God?
Yeah. I mean,
it's God's love for us.
Yeah.
Results in our love for God.
Yeah. So it's always starting from that point, but that it's reciprocated with us loving back. And that religious affection is not cold and removed, but it's burning and vibrant.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
That's what he was saying.
Does burning and vibrant manifest itself with like big emotions?
Right. Maybe but maybe not.
Yeah. That's not what we're really looking for, says Edwards.
Yeah. I guess this is why I think of him as different than Whitefield, right? Because I feel like Whitefield is so emotional, which is what Benjamin Franklin is speaking to. Do you know?
Yeah.
And that Edwards always has that sense of making a distinction, not that you're cold or unfeeling, but just that isn't the indicator. Right? For him.
Right.
That is not the indicator for him. Like, he's so much more temperate than Whitefield.
Completely. And I think that he would say to the old lights, hey, if you think that an outpouring of emotion is a sign that someone is not in God's favor, well, then you're wrong.
Yeah, right. So he has a critique.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. That was amazing.
You ready for our rapid questions?
Sure.
Old lights or new lights?
Old lights.
Oh, you got to explain that, because this whole thing has felt like the old lights are like, they're kind of curmudgeonly. Why old lights?
I will just say, I heard Ross Douthat talk about his own spiritual journey as a young person. And
Ross Douthat is a New York Times editorialist, also a Catholic. Go on.
Mm-hmm. And he talked about going to Pentecostal meetings with his mother as a child and seeing people be super emotional around him. And he felt like, I don't know what's going on here. And he is deeply faithful, but that never appealed to him. He said, oh, look, I have a more not intellectual, he did not use that word, but he just said a more considered, like my faith is more considered or less ratchet it up. Okay, I don't feel that way because I feel that my faith is very full, but I do feel suspicious of large mass movements. I just do. I feel suspicious.
We could have a podcast just on this.
We sure could. That's why I'm saying old lights.
Next rapid question: Edwards or Whitefield?
Edwards.
Oh yeah. Okay, you want to expand on that one?
No, I just think Edwards is, he's the OG.
He is the OG. Emily, those are the only two rapid fire questions that I had.
Okay, great.
It's a weak segment, I admit. It's a weak segment. Hey, listen, everyone, we're so glad that you joined us for this season on love, in particular, agape. Our next podcast is going to focus on art and music. If you listen to any of the art and music podcasts from last season, Emily, for me, they were our strongest podcasts, and you led them. So I'm really looking forward to it. After that, we will follow that discussion with a discussion of two mystical authors, Julian of Norwich and Simone Weil. We want to thank Mark Gooby, our producer, and Tom Hagerman, who wrote and performed our music. Emily, I'm looking forward to agape art and music.
Me too, Tim.
I'll see you then.